What's up guys, my name is Michael and today we're gonna talk about black and white conversion in Capture One. Now two things I want to talk about before we get started. The first thing is, if you haven't already purchased a license for Capture One 12, then you should do it right now, because the discount that I provided to you in all of my videos is ending on December 31st. The discount code is AMBPC and it gives you up to 10% savings on your Capture One license. Second thing is, if you want to support my work, please do me a favor and purchase Capture One through the link in the description. Now let's go into Capture One. I have quite some images here from my road trip through the US. If you haven't already, make sure you check out my video about my US road trip, which I have recorded on my XH1. It's here. Capture One has a very good workflow for black and white conversion. Now let me show you what you should do. You should right click in this area up here and then select Add Tool tab and then go to black and white. Now this will give you a whole tab which is optimized for black and white conversion. Now let's go ahead and play with that a little bit. Now first of all, I want to start with an image that is really great for black and white conversion. I want to create a new variant because I don't want to screw up the edits that I have already done to this image. So what you see here is a completely unedited Fuji raw file. Now why is this image very good for black and white conversion? It's simple, because it has blue, green and some red in it. Now what I can do when playing with black and white is I can just enable the black and white conversion right here. And now I can adjust all of the color sliders in here. Now let's start with green, for example. I can decrease green, and I will also need to decrease yellow because green contains a lot of yellow. And once I do that, you see with the yellow slider, I can play with the brightness of the green and yellow parts in the image. Same is true for blue and cyan, which is gonna be the sky. So I can make the sky really dark or really bright. And you can see what kind of difference that already makes. So I want to darken the sky, but not completely black. And I want to keep this mountain and all the stones, I want to keep them bright, and I want to darken all of the green that is in there. So let's go right in here, check the details on this image, give the computer a little bit of time, and now I can see that I want to increase the clarity. I like to play with clarity a lot and as well with structure. So I will increase the clarity and structure, and you can now see that the image really has got some punch to it. So let's go ahead and hide the editing tool tabs on the right with Command T, so we can see our image better. And now we can go ahead and give the image a little more punch in these areas as well. So what I'm going to do for this reason is I'm gonna add a new layer. And as you can see, there are currently no layers in this black and white tool tab. So what I can do now is I can go back to my own editing tool tab because it has layers. Or I could as well go back in the black and white tool tab and add a layers tool tab. Add a layer. And on this layer, I want to go into the curve, give the curve tool this kind of typical S-curve look, darken the shadows and brighten the highlights. And now I want to use my brush tool, which I can get by pressing B, increase the brush size, of course, obviously, and paint in this area of all of this stone and mountain where I want to apply this curve. So just doing some local adjustments is pretty important, not only in black and white conversion, but whatever you do, obviously. I'm gonna press M to see the mask that I paint, and then I can see that I missed some of the areas in here. Paint some more. It doesn't have to be perfect. It has to look good, you know? That's always something you should keep in mind. It has to look good. I mean, that's kind of a simple trick, but you get the idea. And now I can change the contrast in these areas. So I don't want to brighten the highlights too much. Guess I want to go a little more like this, just to get a more dramatic black and white look. So if I would now disable this layer, it would look like this. And if I re-enable the layer, it will look like this. So that's the before color version, and that's my black and white version. All right, so the last thing I want to do to this image is add some grain. I think film grain is something that is especially looking good in black and white images. And film grain, especially for my kind of photography, doesn't fit so well in color photography. So let's add some film grain to this black and white image. And as you can see, the film grain tool is already inside this black and white toolbar. So I don't have to add it manually, but I will have to adjust the type of grain. Let me show you why. Let's go ahead and go into the sky, because the sky didn't have any grain at all. Let me just reduce the grain so you can see there is no noise or anything in the sky. And I'm going to increase the impact. And now I'm going to change to silver rich. And you can see it looks completely different. Let's go right here in this area. And you can now see that it looks natural, but it doesn't look too harsh. There is also a harsh grain. I don't like this one as much as the silver rich, but it will depend on the print size that you want to print this image, or it will also depend on the question if you want a really clean look, which of course all the Fuji cameras especially, and certainly other cameras as well, will give you, or if you want to introduce some grain like old films really also used to have. So you can also play with that, and you see vignetting is also a pretty commonly used tool in black and white photography. I could add some brightness to the edges, but obviously you would want to do it the other way around. So I don't think the amount slider here in the vignetting tool is the way I would do it, because I want to add a vignette and it shouldn't be brighter if I move the slider to the right, but that's the way. You can also add a little more punch to your black and white shots. Let's play with this image from the desert. To be a little more precise, this image has been taken in the Death Valley. And if you haven't already, you should definitely go to the Death Valley. Death Valley is such an amazing place for photography, and especially these sand dunes are so beautiful. I would really recommend you go in the sand dunes by sunrise or sunset. I have done both, and to be honest, sunrise was a much greater experience, because you go into the sand dunes at night and you wait for sunrise. So, I mean, you have to go there. Let's just edit the image, and you have to trust me on that. So for this image, I want to start with some styles and presets. Now you can see that if I go to the user styles, there are obviously some more than you will have, but you will have the built-in styles. And with the built-in styles, you can go to the legacy, and then you will find quite some black and white presets in there. Some have a lot of grain, some have really high contrast, some have low contrast, but these give you a really good starting point for your black and white conversion in Capture One 12 and also in older Capture One versions as well. So let's go ahead and use the 0, I like this one, as a base. And now I want to apply my own style from my US road trip. I made a style pack. You can get that style pack in my online shop. I will link it in the description, and I will add the Walt Disney style to this one. And you can see that just with these 2 clicks, I got to a really good black and white image. So I'm going to show you the before, which was really flat, and the after, which has a lot of punch. With this image, I want to add a layer as well, because I want to darken the sky. So what I want to do now is just press the G button on my keyboard, which is for gradient. And I'm gonna add a gradient to the sky and darken the exposure up there, just to make it more dramatic. I'm gonna increase contrast up there as well. And I think that looks already pretty good. Let's go ahead and move that down. Yeah, what about that? What I think for this image is it should be cropped, because I think, in my opinion, the eye is always attracted to the brighter parts of an image, which is gonna be the sand in the foreground right here. So what I think we should do right here is just crop the image from the bottom like this. And I think this is improving the image quite drastically. Yeah. Now with this image, I'm pretty happy. Let's zoom in just to see if there is anything we can improve, or if we can get some inspiration by having a closer look. That's something that I would always recommend. Always zoom into your image to see what's happening in the image. I mean, we could go into Photoshop and remove all of the footsteps in the sand, but that's not something we're gonna do today. And you can see that now the image is really way more, it has so much more impact. Before, it was really flat. I mean, a raw file is always flat, and it's good that the raw file is flat, because if it has too much contrast, you cannot add contrast, or you cannot decide if you want to have that contrast. So a good raw file is always a flat image. So you have to do something to make it look good. Don't be lazy, play around with the sliders, use the tools that Capture One gives you for black and white conversion. Add some layers to improve certain areas of your image with the brush tool or with the gradient tool. Play around with the presets, and you can get an amazing result in a very short time. So let's do that for one more image. Again, I'm gonna create a new variant, and I wanna see my tools, so I'm gonna press Command T on my keyboard. Right now, I just wanna enable the black and white conversion, darken the cyan and blue, which will darken the sky, obviously, and play around with the green and yellow, because this will change the way the foreground and especially the cactus will look. And I think, you know, I haven't made a plan for this. I'm just playing around live on camera. That's the way actually post-production works. You don't have a plan. I mean, you don't always know what your image is supposed to look like in the end. And you find out by playing around. Okay, so let's have a look at these areas in here. And I already quite like what I see. And just to give you some background information, this image has been shot on the XH1, ISO 400, ISO 400 because of the dynamic range, 1/280th of a second, f8 on the 16 1.4 lens, which is one of my favorite lenses. Now, before we go on with post-production, let me tell you why I used this lens. The thing is, we have this dramatic background, and I want to get as much as possible of that background into my image, which makes it necessary to use a wide-angle lens. You know, I just don't want to get that small area of the background. I want to get a lot of the background and all of the mountains in the background. So I use a wide-angle lens, but I don't want that cactus to be too small. So I have to get in really close. Now getting in close helps me blurring out the background just a little bit. You know, this is f8. I could have used a higher f number to get my background in focus, but I like exactly the way it looks right now. So we have a really high sharpness where it needs to be, and we get some context in the background to see what's actually going on. So we could now increase our contrast even more, and I think we should do that. So I'm gonna select a brush tool and paint in some more contrast here on the background, and I'm gonna do that by getting into the exposure tab, decreasing exposure, adding contrast, press the M button to see where I have painted already. So I'm gonna paint some more, just like this. Whoops, let me see. Auto mask is always pretty important. To use auto masking means that Capture One will try to detect where you really want to paint. So it helps you creating a good mask much more easily. So in most cases, you want to have the auto mask feature on for your brush tool. Okay. And I mean, there are two options here. I could have also used my linear gradient tool and then erase some parts of that again, or I could as well paint everything in manually. So it depends on what you prefer. So let's darken the sky some more, just to get some more drama in here. I like it like this. Just again, the before and the after, and I'm pretty happy. Maybe I would need to crop that in a little bit. Let's play with the crop like this. And by the way, you can now see that I don't have a fixed aspect ratio for my crop tool. And I like to do that a lot of the times, because just because my camera sensor has a fixed aspect ratio, it doesn't mean that all of my pictures need to have that same aspect ratio. You know, for example, here, check that out. If I make a book and I like to make that book square, I mean, why not? I can make a book square. And I can also include images that are not square in the book. I don't want to be dictated by a software or a book or a manufacturer about the aspect ratio of my images. So I like to be free whenever it's possible. Just my opinion about that. What do you think about cropping? How do you make your black and white conversions? Let me know in the comments. And if you're new to Capture One, make sure you check my channel, because there are plenty of other videos about Capture One, and there's a lot to learn there. If you haven't got your license already, make sure you're getting it pretty soon. If you're watching this too late, then also make sure to check the description because maybe some new promotions will be coming, but I'm not sure about that. So December 31st, 2018 is the deadline for the 10% discount. I got everything that is on my list. Thanks for watching, guys. Have a good day and see you soon.